Welcome everyone to another episode of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 14th of June and this is episode 63. I'm excited to introduce this episode after a fantastic Graph Day and Graph Hack set of events. I certainly feel inspired and excited for the future ahead. So without further ado, let's jump into the opening remarks for today's episode. So, as always, we do a shout out to 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧, and this episode is no different. So we have 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧 for episode 68 for the 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗂 episode podcast. I enjoyed this episode. It was very interesting. I think of all the episodes that I've consumed, this one had more of a kind of DAO focus, which I appreciated. So 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧 is the founder of, the product manager of DAO House. And he spoke a lot about DAO House as a no-code platform and how it could help people manage their DAOs and how they have a mission to foster a diverse and open ecosystem of DAOs. And so, there's new DAOs that are being spun up, at Graph Day, Subgraph DAO was announced, which is another exciting new DAO in addition to the already existing Graph Advocates DAO. And so, if you guys are interested in DAO coordination and specifically DAO House as a tool and how it's going to enable more DAOs to be able to coordinate and build this new economy, then I would highly recommend listening to that particular episode. So that is very short opening remarks for today, because obviously we have a lot of discussion about Graph Day and Graph Hack in particular throughout the episode. So without further ado, I'll hand it to Anna to take us into Repo Watch.
Hello. As always, just to remind you that links to release notes and be found on the agenda. And before we start covering the major blockchain clients, I want to remind you that recently the flow has been updated to only mention clients that have had new releases. You can still find all other repos and their latest releases on the agenda. So in terms of clients that have had releases, on 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗧𝗂𝗧 version 2, since we last spoke 2 weeks ago, there's been many releases. So I'm just briefly going to just touch on the older ones and stop at the newer ones. So we've had 2022-05-08 alpha was it basically introduces new BSC snapshots and implements new RPC methods around, so ETH new block filter, ETH new pending transaction filter, and a few more. Then we have version 2022-05-09 alpha that reduces memory required to build snapshot indices, fixes discrepancies that caused incorrect sync on Polygon Board, and a few other fixes. And then the latest ones that you're likely to be most interested in are 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗧𝗂𝗧 version 2022-06-01 alpha, which is the first release to address fixing local snapshot creation problem that was caused by dump blocks body not found. So this issue, the fix required manual steps and resync. However, in the next version, which is the very latest version, so 2022-06-02 alpha, that dump blocks body not found was fully fixed. It also, this version also introduced data migration that performs some recovery from body not found. and it causes to re-download all non-snapshotted blocks. There's many other bugs that have been fixed, and before we move on with other releases, I'd like to ask people, because there's been a lot of new releases on Aragon v2, what kind of experiences have you guys had, and if there's anything you want to share about these latest releases. I will take that as a no and continue. We have had on Streaming Fast Get Ethereum block version 1. We have had, again, quite a few releases. I'm just gonna name these. So Get version 1.10.18 Firehose 1, Get version 1.10.18.1 Firehose 1, Get version 1.10.18.2 Firehose 1, BSC version 1.111 Firehose 1, and Polygon version 0.2.16 Firehose 1. And every single one of these releases has an equivalent release for Ethereum block version 2. So I won't mention those. You can see them listed. Then Get itself has had a new release. So version 1.10.18. This is a very big, many changes here. But the ones that jumped to me. So Get default gas limit target is now 30 M. Then the flag that required blocks has been fixed. There's a new command, so get db check state content, that checks integrity of try nodes in the database. EVM TA tenant can now run post-merge state transitions, and EVM mStore is now 75% faster. Also, this Get release is built on Go version 1.18.1, and the debug test sign click block is no longer available anymore. In addition to all of these changes, there have been a lot of logging and debugging improvements. And because I realized this is a big release, again, does anyone have any experience to share about Get version 1.10.18? All right. In that case, Streaming Fast Solana has had a new release, so version 0.1.0. And this is all we have on major blockchain clients. And on Graph Stack, neither GraphNode, no indexer service, and agent have had any new releases. But I'd like to take another moment to ask if anyone wants to share any experiences about the Graph Stack or anything I've mentioned so far.
Yeah, there's something I'd like to mention. I don't know if everyone's aware, but there will be an Ethereum upgrade about 2 weeks from now to delay the difficulty bump. So that means that we'll all need to upgrade our Ethereum nodes by then. I don't think there have been no releases yet to support it, but I guess that will come in a week or two. So that should not be a problem. But Open Ethereum is now archived on this repo, so that means there will no longer be any updates on Open Ethereum. At least there will be no official releases for Open Ethereum. So that basically means that Open Ethereum will die about 2 weeks from now. So if anyone is still running Open Ethereum, now is a good time to spin up new Aragon nodes.
So much for that mention. We will also make sure to follow the announcement and further include it in future episodes. But thank you for letting us know about that. And also, it was wonderful to meet you at the Graph Day.
Likewise, thank you.
All right. Anyone else about RepoWatch? I will take that as a no and hand over to Juan for Protocol Watch.
Thanks, Anna. Can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome, cool. Going into Protocol Watch after 2 weeks, we have a bit of an update with form governance. We have a few GAPs that are interesting. The main one that I would like to point out is the GAP 33, which adds osmosis indexing for the graph node. This is heavily based on the already Cosmos integration with the graph node, Tendermint to be more exact. But it does expand a little bit to add a few osmosis, particular, I think, data points or something along those lines. So it's really cool to see more integration with the graph node. Next, we have a few updates with GAP 31 being one of the main ones regarding the Arbitrum GRT bridge. It's an update to the GP to add a little bit more information to the call hooks feature for the bridge. Then going into GAP 27, which is the altruistic allocations discussion. I don't know if you remember about stale allocations and stuff. The current proposal has advanced in the governance process and has been approved by the council. There's also a link for the snapshot voting if anyone wants to take a look at that. And then there's a small comment in support of the GRP 0001, which is the improvement for subgraph, basically for subgraph development. To be taken care of, like updating Rinkavi address book, using Automine for the local deployments, and maybe doing some stuff regarding continuous integration. There are a few of them which are noteworthy. Mainly, there's a work in progress fix to ensure that the subgraph NFT contract handles the metadata with leading zeros correctly. This is because of a small bug with that particular contract, nothing critical or anything. Then we have a few PRs regarding L2 scaling. There's a closed PR, which was a feature trying to use Gelato as a drip rewards for the L2 reward for the indexing rewards in L2, if I'm correct, which was an experimental kind of like trying if that works. Seems to not work yet, so it has been kind of like closed in favor of the other PR, which I'm going to be talking about, which is a draft regarding another way to generate keeper rewards for the reservoir drip through token issuance in L2. It's still in the draft, but I think it's quite advanced, kind of like almost work in progress, if you will. So yeah, there's been a few progresses in regards to anything related to L2 scaling, which is always super nice to see. Going into the network subgraphs, we don't really have any new releases since last IOH. So yeah, that's about it for Protocol Watch. I'll pass it to Abel for the open discussion.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I'm very excited to announce this particular section. So as we alluded to at the intro of today's episode, Graph Day and Graph Hack were full of tons of announcements. And I thought that it would be great today to discuss the ins and outs of these announcements, and particularly the ones that are related to indexers. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an open discussion on a select few announcements that we think are the most relevant for indexers. And the way that we want to structure this is so that it's going to be kind of like an open discussion. What we want to do is we're going to post the 8 announcements that we think are indexer related. So I'm just going to go post them there. And then what we can do is, in fact, let me go ahead and do it now. 1 second. Seems to not be working. Let me try again. I'm going to add an emoji to each. There we go. Somebody's done it for me. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Amazing. Thanks, Chris. So as you can see, Chris is going ahead and adding the 8 emojis to each of these announcements. And so whichever one you guys think is the most interesting that we could discuss, please go ahead and vote. And yeah, we'll see which one gets the most amount of votes. And then once we have established that, we'll kind of go through each of these in that particular order. So we'll give people a moment just to have a look at the topics, go to the stage chat, and go ahead and vote on these particular topics. I could see the number going up, so people are voting. We'll give everyone like 30 seconds or something to make their votes. Oh, it looks like topic number 2 is steaming ahead. Topic number 1 is also quite popping. Topic number 6 is also quite popping. Wow, this is exciting. I'm seeing the numbers going up. Cool. Keep the votes coming in. Keep the votes coming in. Okay. All right. So it looks like we have somewhat of an order. Let's go with topic 2. So Chris, you want to speak to the sunsetted hosted service in Q1 2023?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Yeah, what an announcement. And I guess just zooming out, what an incredible time at Graph Day. And I know that, many of us met for the first time in person, and it was truly a pleasure to get to know all of the members of the community that were able to make it. Thanks for coming, and it was really a pleasure to meet all of you. So speaking about sunsetting of the hosting service, I mean, this one really speaks for itself. It's incredibly exciting for all of us indexers as that gradual sunsetting happens. So it's not going to be a kind of on-off switch. Traffic will gradually kind of be pushed from the hosted service. And maybe to clarify, we might see restrictions being added to the hosted service, like the inability to publish new subgraphs. And these restrictions will just naturally push more and more traffic over to the decentralized network. We obviously expect a kind of more formal sunsetting in Q1 2023. As we all know, the hosted service processes, well in excess of 1 billion queries per day. And so for indexers, that's going to mean a very significant influx of query business as this happens. So opening it up, does anyone have any thoughts on this or perspectives they'd like to share?
This is definitely an open discussion, so very keen to hear people's perspectives, particularly indexers as well, and how you guys are thinking about scaling operations to meet this demand.
Or if you are thinking about scaling operations, I guess that's a great idea. I know that some of the work we'll do with indexer experience will help people scale their operations. But yeah, what is everyone else planning around the hosted service?
As for me, it will work only with L2 solution. So we can't adapt easily for now if we need to reallocate to another subgraph to serve the queries.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Cost drivers are obviously pretty serious for us indexers, and L2 is just a huge unlock for driving down costs. So I can understand that. I think it's also worth recognizing that the hosted service supports something like 34 networks, and the decentralized network today obviously just supports Ethereum. So there are a number of dependencies that will need to land in production for us indexers before we can begin to support the traffic on some of those other chains.
The problem is that we don't understand what needs to be served and how it will be scaled after sunsetting the hosted services. And it's not so big problem to scale your infrastructure to serve the queries, but to understand the economics behind it. And I think that the biggest problem is just the transparency for all these activities.
Could you elaborate on that? I think like for indexers, obviously, I think the two kind of major economics type challenges are in query pricing and cost model development, and also in allocations and allocating to the right set of subgraphs. And even as we see a significant migration of hosted service traffic and multi-chain support on the decentralized network, I think both of those challenges fundamentally remain the same. Are you seeing kind of new challenges that arise in this environment?
That a lot of new networks will be introduced that will, I think, spread the inflation and indexing rewards between all these allocations. So we will have a growth in allocations, and queries and fees will become more major factor for your operations. And we need to understand how it will change the equation. So if we now can understand that based on the signals we can get some kind of indexing rewards, how can we work with it with query fees? So how many queries will be directed to which indexers based on current selection algorithms? So we just can't get the whole information because we don't know how the system will behave.
Yeah, I guess like the scaling of query fees would kind of like modify your, I guess, optimization functions. We're currently, I guess most indexers currently are optimizing for indexing rewards. And once query fees become more predominant, it would really change the functions themselves that you need to use for like revenue optimization, which it is a good point that it's quite difficult to predict query volume without like knowing exactly what you're going to be receiving, given that there's also a selection algorithm in the middle and stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge, I think.
Yeah. And for small indexers, it's also a huge amount of expenses for the infrastructure. So maybe they will stick to some centralized infrastructure solutions because they spin nodes for each network to support the queries. So it will just be, I don't know, for small indexers, maybe it will be more centralized serving queries way. Not that the big players can afford to spin nodes for each network and so on.
Yeah, I think like supporting many different chains will be one of the main challenges, especially for smaller indexers. I think bigger indexers won't really have that much more of a challenge spinning up nodes in for index in different chains in a multi-chain scenario. But it still opens up a lot of like potential new revenue optimization routes that were not currently available, even for smaller indexers. Like maybe you're a smaller indexer that specializes in VSC data, which is known to be really hard to get because of the speed of the chain, and maybe that gives you some edge over the competition in terms of how you can optimize your revenue based on query fees, which were not possible before, or not really that predominant before, if you will. So I think overall, even if it's a challenge for smaller indexers, it's also quite an opportunity, even if you're a smaller indexer, right? Because if you have some sort of edge over your competition, you will always get like extra potential revenue streams, if you will.
I'm just curious, guys. How will the graph interact with the subgraphs? Not subgraphs, sorry, with the subnets in Avalanche? Will it be possible at all in the future, or is it possible even now?
I believe today on the hosted service there is support for the Avalanche C chain subnet, which obviously is an EVM chain. I don't believe there is currently support for other subnets, but if there is enough developer demand, I'm sure that support will come. Streaming Fast and Edge and Node have recently done some fantastic work on publishing documentation that lays out the process for new chain integrations. I think the kind of quality of the documentation and the support provided by those teams would also enable someone like Avalanche to do that integration directly if they wanted to, speed up support.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I want to pick up a question from 𝗨𝗂𝗧 regarding if there are any details on how curation will work across chains. I think this is mostly regarding multi-chain indexing, not regarding L2 scaling. So the way that it would work, it would work in the same way that it's working right now, basically, to make it simple. Subgraphs are subgraphs. It doesn't really matter which chain they're indexing, so they can be signaled in the same way that any other Ethereum subgraph will be signaled. The only difference, of course, will be the required integration of the epoch block oracle, which will enable indexing rewards on multi-chain support, basically. And why this is required is because you do require some sort of like knowledge of what block on a non-Ethereum mainnet chain you're going to be using to close your allocations and craft your POIs, right? So basically, multi-chain indexing does not require any changes in regards of curation. It will work in the same way. The only changes required would be on the epoch block oracle, having the epoch block oracle be integrated into the indexer agent, so that you can actually be able to craft consistent POIs across different chains. Does that answer your question, 𝗨𝗧𝗧?
Yeah, it does. Definitely also comes up with other questions. What about the timings across the blockchains, etc.? That's up to the Oracle, I guess.
Yeah, that's all going to be handled by the epoch block oracle, which is just a tool that we're going to use to create consensus as to which point of reference you will be using in each of the chains to close with a correct POI, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. Yeah, we will definitely have to scale up our operations if we have to support that many networks. But I guess there will always be some networks that are more popular than others. I guess it's all about getting the right curation onto your subgraphs on the small chains, I suppose. Do you see any trouble in that, or do you think that will be handled naturally by the market?
I think it's most likely going to be handled naturally by the market and the requirements. Like if you're running a protocol in, let's say, Avalanche or maybe, I don't know, BSC or whatever, you will be incentivized to curate on your subgraphs to be sure that indexers will be scaling their operations to be able to pick up BSC or Avalanche subgraphs, because there will be a natural incentive for them to do so, given that there will most likely be less competition over those multi-chain subgraphs, if you will, or non-Ethereum subgraphs, which are, I mean, every indexer is running an Ethereum node, but not every indexer is running a BSC node. So if you're one of the few that can handle BSC load, you will, of course, have an edge over your competition. And if there are subgraphs that have incentives for you to index BSC, you will be more incentivized further. So yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Do we have any details about the timeline? Which networks will be introduced into the decentralized networks first, and how will the process go? Or all will be done on the first quarter of next year?
I don't think we have any details as to which network. I guess your question was mostly geared towards which networks are going to be introduced first into the decentralized network, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I don't think there's a specific path for that yet, given that the block oracle is still under development, and it's a heavy requirement for multi-chain indexing. But I guess we will be hearing more about that relatively soon once the Epoch block oracle is fully live.
I guess it would be very natural to take some kind of like sentiment that has 50 plus blockchains. It would be fairly easy to, mirror all these chains.
Process-wise, I think we can expect the Epoch block oracle to land in a testnet deployment, and so we'll all have the opportunity to, play with that. And I would imagine that it maybe also gives us some indication of which chains are likely to hit the decentralized mainnet first as well.
Do we have any insight on the? Well, let me kind of preface my question. I noticed that there was a blog post that said that the sequence of actions for sunsetting the hosted network are going to be, at a specific point, no new subgraphs will be able to be deployed to the hosted network, and then after that, no new upgrades, and then after that, fully shutting down and transitioning to the decentralized network. Do we know, is that going to be blockchain specific, or is that just going to be new subgraphs on any chain can be deployed, etc.?
I think I don't know if anyone from Edge Node is here that is willing to comment.
Yeah,
go for it.
Thiago here. Well, Derek, currently, what we know about this is that the hosted service will stop. It won't differentiate blockchains, only mainnets and testnets. As of now, we understand that when the hosted service finally ends, it will still hold testnets, so people can fiddle with subgraphs indexing the testnet, but all mainnets won't be available anymore in the hosted service. All the mainnets are going to be in the network itself. So,
does this apply to non-supported chains too? For example, if the decentralized network does not support Avalanche, like one of the easiest examples, would the hosted service stop giving support for those?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that we will prioritize indexer experience on this point. I don't think we will get rid of we'll stop supporting the network if it's not on the indexer network, I believe. But yeah, I can ask inside and update you guys back on this, because I'm not sure about it.
So definitely the intention is to get support on the network before stopping deployments on the hosted service. So we'll be identifying chains to migrate to the network first. We will definitely not surprise indexers with that. So we'll test that on testnet first and give you guys all a chance to start syncing and make sure you're fully synced with those chain clients before moving those onto the decentralized network. And then once they're supported on the network, disallowing new deployments on the hosted service.
Cool. Any other questions on this topic? Is there any indication of what networks are the most used on the hosted service, or is there a way to get that information and make that public? For example, like if there are just a ton of BSC queries coming in, that would be an indication as an indexer of like, okay, we need to start preparing for that one, first type of thing.
So the decision is going to be a combination of which has the most use. Obviously, we don't want to bring chains over that aren't being used, but also we'll probably start with chains that are not incredibly heavy to sync. So BSC, even though it has a lot of use, is most likely not going to be one of the first chains to be brought over because of the complexity of running a client on BSC. And I don't think that we are going to be sharing volume numbers across the chains, just because by practice we don't share proportional volume on subgraphs or chains with people. But that's something that I can talk with the team about, maybe getting to you guys. But again, we're going to try to be as transparent as we can ahead of moving chains in, so it won't be a surprise to any indexers.
Awesome, thank you. Amazing, a very meaty topic indeed. Final call for last questions before we move on. All right, well, in that case, let's move on to layer 2 scaling for Arbitrum. So Juan, take it away.
Yep, so no surprises here. We've been discussing L2 scaling for a while. During Graph Day, there were a few figures displayed about the potential gas savings, right? Like, which I think for most of us and most of the indexers, delegators, and curators is one of the most important figures. How much are we going to be saving in monthly costs? And what kind of like use cases are going to be unlocked by this? I think Stake Machine, you very importantly showed out that the I guess the sunsetting of the hosted service kind of like requires in some way or another that operations become a little bit more flexible. Gas savings are really important for this because of the kind of like speed at which you can react to the changes in the network, which is super important for indexers. Well, gas savings are incredible in L2. Like I think like the least that you can expect is a 20x gas saving, and once we move to Arbitrum plus Nitro, you also get like almost 70x, close to 70x, and we can even go further. So yeah, those look very, very promising. There's a lot of progress on that front. Mainly Pablo and Ariel are working heavily on the L2 scaling, so it's one of the main priorities right now. And yeah, that's pretty much all of the announcements that have been done and all of the progress that has been showed. I don't know, guys, if you have any questions. I know we've dedicated a long section before in regards to also scaling, but I guess there's always more questions, right? So yeah, I'll open it up.
I'm curious if it will be possible that query fees will be so high that we can neglect their indexing rewards, so we can dynamically reallocate to different subgraphs just to serve the queries inside the epoch and without trying to get the indexing rewards, because the query fees are so high that they will cover all the costs.
Within the epoch, you mean like opening up an allocation in the same epoch, closing it out in favor of another, to reallocate in favor of a different subgraph, just to get the query fees, forfeiting the indexing rewards?
Yeah.
I think that you can't close an allocation on the same epoch. I'm not entirely, I don't really remember. Maybe Ford, do you remember if it's possible?
That's correct. You have to wait until the next epoch in order to close. You can't open and close within one epoch.
Each case is and that we will have some time between the epochs, and we can just an hour before the end of the epoch and an hour after. So we just know that this time we can serve a lot of queries for this subgraph because it's just daily high load for this subgraph, and we just know that we can serve a lot of queries during these edge cases, and we can just get them more rewards from the queries than indexing fees.
Yeah, I think it's not a hard requirement for the agent to not allow you to close. I think if you forfeit the rewards, it should be possible to close an allocation just to free up the stake and move it somewhere else, which is one of the use cases that L2 will unlock, because in L1 it would be extremely cost prohibitive. I don't remember if there's a hard requirement why the indexer agent does not allow you to do that.
I believe it's a requirement in the contracts, not in the agent.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. It's worth checking on. I believe that the contracts require that an allocation is open for at least one epoch. So
yeah, that's correct.
One thing that can always be changed though. So the epoch length is a setting. So that's one potential area of change when we move to L2 is shortening the epoch length. If that is something that makes sense for indexers and everyone involved.
Yeah, I think the requirements are because of the calculations for the reward distribution. So as long as you close with the 0x0 POI, so basically forfeit your rewards, it should be possible to make a change so that it's allowed within the epoch. But as Forth said, like if we have the possibility of shortening the epoch length on L2 because of the gas savings, that's another route that we can take to make the data more organized, if you will.
Yeah, I mean that it will be more dynamic market if we will go to L2 and we will reduce the gas fees, and we just can create different strategies that can allow us to make more profits because we are more dynamic. And yeah, that was the question.
Yeah. Also, it's a lot better in terms of user experience, like subgraph developers being able to have a more consistent and faster adoption of their subgraphs because of a more dynamic market. It's also super useful for them too. So it's not something that only really impacts and improves the life of indexers, but rather the whole network.
Yeah, I mean, because all these networks are worldwide and we have different time zones and different subgraphs have different loads during the day. There will be nighttime and different time zones, so we can just try to reallocate our computation power to different subgraphs in different time zones during the day on the daytime.
Couple of thoughts to share on this. So plus one, I do believe that restriction is in the contracts, not the agent, and you can close in the same epoch if you forfeit rewards. We have in the past spoken about the fact that L2 would allow us to reassess many protocol parameters like the epoch length, and that tightening some of those parameters, like shortening the duration of an epoch, is generally a good thing. Like just as one example, if epochs are shorter and therefore the maximum allocation lifetime is shorter, that creates more data integrity security because indexers are forced to post valid POIs more regularly. So this is definitely on the table. The big trade-off, though, is that by tightening parameters, we trade that for gas costs. So if, for example, we get a 20x gas improvement from L2, but we halve the allocation or the epoch time, then we effectively land up with a 10x improvement. So we're there's a spectrum of trade-off there. The last thing I will say to your question, State Machine, about like this future where query fees could be so significant that indexers kind of don't care about indexing rewards. I seem to remember that the council some time ago stated that any kind of so as we know, like indexing rewards are funded by protocol inflation, and generally, we don't want inflation. We just have it today because it's a way of bootstrapping the supply side of the market, and in the face of low query fees, ensuring that we have a lot of indexers ready to serve demand. I would expect that if we get to a future where query revenues are, so strong of an incentive, I would expect we might see the council vote to drop the rate of protocol inflation and therefore indexing rewards, and essentially phase out indexing rewards because they were really just intended as a bootstrapping mechanism once the query market reaches maturity.
But how it will affect even a smaller indexer? So if they can't get a significant amount of queries, but for now they can have at least some indexing rewards. So it's just I think, long process.
Sure. And, I imagine that phase out would be gradual, and it only makes sense in an environment where query, market incentives are strong enough that indexing rewards just don't really matter anymore. Even for smaller indexers.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, personally, I think that this is a conversation that's likely more for after the migration to L2 and after making mainnet multi-chain. In particular, the making mainnet multi-chain will involve a lot of additional costs that indexer will need to choose, at least to choose and potentially to invest in some of it. So yeah, if I can give my personal opinion here, I would say, not before we're really solid into the multi-chain world of the mainnet that we can start having the conversation of sort of diminishing the indexing rewards.
Definitely agree. I don't think that that's a near term or even medium term thing. But just, kind of in the situation that Stake Machine described, where, query fee revenues are so strong, I think we should expect that indexing rewards are phased out.
Yeah, it would be beautiful to see that.
Definitely.
Cool. Any final questions on this?
The Nitro was mentioned. What it is about?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I can take this if nobody else wants to. So Nitro is an upgrade to Arbitrum itself. So it doesn't really have anything to do with the L2 integration work that we're doing. When Arbitrum rolls out Nitro, it should be totally seamless for all of the applications that run on Arbitrum. But it's essentially like a re-architecture of Arbitrum to be significantly more efficient. And just by virtue of the fact that they will compress the call data that is persisted onto Ethereum layer 1 by a significant factor, the costs for end users and applications will drop as well, quite substantially.
Great. I just was confused because State Channels has also Go Nitro protocol, so it was just confusion.
Yeah,
Thanks for clear.
Sure. And then I think Brandon also mentioned phase 3, which is if we see Ethereum adopting EIP 4488, that creates a new market for persisting the type of data that rollups like Arbitrum persist onto the chain, and will massively drop costs for all rollups quite substantially. I think we get from Arbitrum plus Nitro is estimated at roughly a 70x cost reduction. If we get EIP 4488, that looks more like 300x.
Epoch will be around an hour.
Yeah, let's hope.
Juan, I think you were going to mention something there, right?
No, I was just stating that, yes, that's correct. It's 73x for Nitro upgrade and 300x for EAP 4488. But it does require something that it's well outside of our scope and control. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, please interrupt me if there are any further questions. If not, then I'll move forward to the last announcement for today's episode. So we're kind of running up on time, so not sure how much of an open discussion we can have after this. But the next topic is the GraphOps grant as well as the Messari grant. So yeah, Chris and I will be speaking about that. So I'll kick off by talking about the Messari grant. So it's a $12.5 million grant, and Messari has been awarded this grant to work towards creating and maintaining a strong subgraph standards for the network, and also building a robust subgraph, or continuing to build the robust developer community around subgraphs. So anyone can spin up a subgraph, which is great. But if you're someone like Messari who heavily relies on these subgraphs and there are no standards, it can be pretty difficult to rely on these subgraphs. And so Messari has obviously established this and realized, okay, we need to work towards creating a new schema for the subgraphs on a per sector basis. For example, across different chains, they'll be building, for example, DEX subgraphs and a DEX subgraph standard or a lending subgraph standard. Something to that effect. And right now they have about 20 subgraphs deployed and about 25 in development and about 25 subgraph developers working on this at the minute. So the aim that they have for the amount of subgraphs they want to create is about 200. But, that's obviously on the lower end. I think the team have established that, they think they can reach more than that, which is very exciting. They're also going to be leading subgraph working groups. And they have about 10 to 15 people on the team who are working specifically on this side of the company. And just a final piece on this, before we kind of move on, I think why this is important is that standards really help enable network effects. So if we think about Ethereum, there are many reasons why Ethereum is successful. Arguably, I think one of the most important ones was the ERC20 standard. That really propelled Ethereum to the next level. People were able to create tokens effortlessly and distribute those tokens down to this standard. And I think, it's early and we shall see how this plays out in terms of these subgraph standards. But, a similar effect could happen around the graph, right? Like when these standards get introduced, it could mean that a significant amount of people use subgraphs and more importantly, rely on subgraphs. So for me, this is incredibly exciting and I'm, buzzing to see how Messari kind of navigates this and makes this hopefully a success. So that's it. Unfortunately, there's not much of an open discussion here. So I'll hand it to Chris to talk to us about our grant, the GraphOps grant.
Yeah, thanks, Abel. I'm sure we'll do a follow-up episode with Messari and speak, more about some of the things that they're working on and the impact. But yeah, I certainly share your opinion that is going to be super impactful. Yeah, obviously at Graph Day, GraphOps was awarded a $12 million grant, which we will receive over the next 5 years. So it really creates a strong long-term alignment for us with the Graph protocol ecosystem, and we're super excited to scale our impact within it and do more of the work that we do. I think I'll touch on kind of 3 areas that we are pretty focused on right now. The first is our broad work on the protocol itself and network operations. So this includes a lot of the work that Juan has been leading, things like the principal protected bonding curves in Curation v2 and the Epoch block oracle. And we'll, of course, continue to make major contributions through the protocol economics working group and network operations working group. The next area is kind of under core development, and we will be designing and developing a gossip network that will initially be targeted to indexers. So all of you, and we're super excited. I imagine quite soon we'll start running sessions and collecting feedback with all of you to inform the design. In short, the gossip network is kind of what it sounds like. It will allow indexers to exchange messages with one another directly, as opposed to having to intermediate all of the messages or signals that they send via the protocol smart contracts. We're rapidly running out of time, so I did speak a little bit more about this at Graph Day on the core developer panel. I'll drop a link to that in the stage chat if you're curious to watch more. But yeah, we're super excited for the Gossip Network and the use cases that will unlock. But you can imagine both kind of core modules and also third-party modules that build on top of that messaging functionality and allow indexers to do real-time sharing of a lot of the data that's currently inside of the gateways, things like query fee volumes, price information, just query volumes across subgraphs. Also things like forming real-time consensus on data integrity and proofs of indexing. Yeah, there are just so many kind of potential use cases that could be built on top of this. So yeah, we're really excited about that. And of course, to speak to all of you and inform, exactly where we focus on first there. Then the final piece that is worth mentioning today is under indexer experience, where we are focused on delivering a set of first-class tools to deploy and automate indexer operations inside of Kubernetes. And that is not just, with the assumption that indexers are running Kubernetes, because we know that many indexers today make the very reasonable decision to run on bare metal machines. So part of that scope is to make it as seamless and easy as possible for indexers running on bare metal to provision Kubernetes and begin to reason about their infrastructure and the workloads that they put into it in a Kubernetes context, which we think is super essential, particularly as we move towards, the full sunset of the hosted service and, support for 30 plus chains being added. Single machines just won't cut it anymore. And it will be really important to think about infrastructure in more kind of holistic and abstract terms. So yeah, broadly speaking, we'll be supporting indexers on that journey and, hopefully make Kubernetes just the best way to run an indexer on the network. Yeah, that's at the top of the hour. If anyone has questions or would like to jump into a call or chat more about this, if anyone wants to test some of these tools early, please DM me. I love chatting with all of you. It's an amazing community and really looking forward to working with all of you on this stuff. Back to you, Abel.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, very exciting announcement. And of course, buzzing to be able to kind of work towards all of these things here. What I will say is that there are many topics that we listed, and we obviously, due to a great amount of engagement on these topics, didn't get through to all of them. But I think what we want to do is work towards more kind of community participation. So today was a fantastic example of the type of format that we want to move towards. Is that in that we believe that IOH is a forum, a town square, if you will, where we come and discuss important ideas, and there's input from all different types of people and parts of the community. So just really grateful for everyone's participation here today, and all of the topics that we didn't cover in today's chat we will kind of speak to in future IOH episodes, and hopefully in like this kind of open discussion format. So thank you all. And then, as we always do at the top of the episode, we hand out a POAP. Unfortunately, POAP is not working again, which is annoying, but we have a solution. So everyone who is in today's call, please put a +1 in the stage chat right now. And that will give me an idea of who attended today's show. And then I will obviously do a retroactive awarding of POAP to each and every one of you who puts a +1. So if you could do that for me right now, if you could go to the stage chat and just put a +1, that would be fantastic. And I'll follow up in the DMs with your POAP for today's episode. There you have it. That is another episode in the bag. Thank you all for attending. We very much appreciate each and every one of you for all of your input and engagement. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in next week's episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
See y'all.